Welcome to episode number 10 of Israel Update. I'm Gadi Taub in Tel Aviv, and with me as usual is Dr. Mike Doran, Senior Fellow at the Hudson Institute. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Gadi. You don't have to call me doctor. You don't have to be so formal.
Okay, let's play chummy then.
No, I want you to call me Excellency.
There was this guy who, when the pronouns craze started, who wanted people to call him Your Excellency. I think he was a conservative in Texas or something, but it was a good one. Anyway, we are the story of the week is the Shifa Hospital, of course. And just to start us off on an anecdote, there was a message from the IDF spokesperson and Lieutenant General Daniel Hagari, in which it was said that the forces of the IDF are bringing with them medical equipment and incubators for babies and baby food, and the IDF medical teams are working with Arab-speaking IDF soldiers to ensure medical supplies get to those who need them. And then the BBC got it all wrong, of course, against Israel. Watch this.
We are hearing from Reuters that is reporting that it says its forces are carrying out an operation against Hamas in Gaza's Shifa Hospital, and they are targeting people, including medical teams as well as Arab speakers. They are also saying that Israel is calling on all Hamas operatives in the hospital to surrender at this point. Once again, we are hearing from Reuters that Israel says that its forces are carrying out an operation against Hamas in that hospital that we had just heard of. They are targeting Arab speakers as well as some of the medical staff there. And they are asking all Hamas operatives in that hospital to surrender.
So the BBC heard that they were bringing IDF Arab-speaking soldiers were used, and they say that the IDF was targeting Arab speakers in Gaza. And it reminded me, Mike, of something from Henry Kissinger's memoir, where, you know, when the American president travels, there's something called an advance team. There's the people who come before him with the Secret Service and everything to make sure that everything goes smoothly. And they're bureaucrats. So the Secret Service asked the Chinese authorities, 72, to give them a list of all known communists before the president comes. That must have been a long list. So yeah, what do we have on our show today? We'll mostly be around the Shifa Hospital affair. We'll give you an update on what's going on the ground. Then we have the amazing story of Aner Shapira, who fought the terrorists with his own hands and saved the lives of some people in this shelter where they threw grenades. And lastly, we will talk about the hostages. But first, Mike, over to you for the headlines.
Okay, 5 headlines, Gadi. First, as you mentioned, the Shifa Hospital. The IDF has been operating since last night in the Shifa Hospital, beneath which Hamas maintains one of its main headquarters. Palestinian sources reported that the troops broke down walls in some of the wards in the western wing of the hospital. The Israelis were initially hopeful that they would find some hostages or signs of hostages in the hospital, but so far those hopes have not been fulfilled. The number 2 headline here is that there's a hostage deal in the works, it appears. Perhaps. The Israeli government official said in an interview to ABC News last night that there could be a breakthrough that would lead to a deal in 2 or 3 days. However, U.S. Special Coordinator for the Middle East, Brett McGurk, is in Israel today. And Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said to him as follows: "The state of Israel will not stop its operations in Gaza until our troops fulfill their missions, destroying Hamas and returning our hostages home to their families," he said. So if part of the hostage, that means if part of the hostage deal is a ceasefire, there will be no hostage deal. Third item on the agenda here, or on the headlines here, is a Biden-Netanyahu conversation last night, Gadi. President Biden spoke with the prime minister, and according to the White House statement, he discussed with him efforts to bring about the release of the hostages, including a large number of children, some of whom are American citizens. You and I will talk more about that later. The fourth item, yesterday here in Washington, D.C., there was a rally The news says about 300,000 people gathered in D.C. I was one of them. I was there to see some friends and show the flag, although I wasn't carrying a flag. And then number 5 here, Hezbollah and the Houthis. The IDF attacked Hezbollah targets in Lebanon last night. And in Eilat, air defense troops intercepted a surface-to-surface missile that was fired by the Houthi militia in Yemen. The missile was intercepted over the Red Sea and did not penetrate Israeli airspace. Those missiles are not getting a lot of attention, Gadi. I'm going to send it over to you in just one second, but I have to put it in an editorial comment. Those missiles are not getting a lot of attention, but they are potentially extremely damaging to Israel. If one of them breaks through the net and hits, they carry very large payloads. They could kill hundreds, even more people. Okay, over to you, Gadi.
So before we're over to me, I think we need you for more details on the ground operation. Before we screen some footage from that the IDF has supplied of what is going on under hospitals, but first to the actual Shifa Hospital, not before we show the interactive map that we now have. So this is the advance according to by days. November 2, 3, and you can see the blue part, which is the IDF closing up on the Shifa Hospital over there in the middle in the shore. And this is more or less the situation on the ground now. Mike, do you need the map for further explanation?
No, let's just point out that while the map is up, that the Israeli operation in military terms, forget about politics, just pure military terms, it's going extremely well, much better than I think anyone expected. Israel is now effectively in control of the north of the Gaza Strip. What I mean to say is that the Hamas grip on Gaza City, its stronghold, is collapsing right before our eyes.
And also, there is an illusion in this map because you don't see any blue on this side here, but this side is Israel. So Hamas is completely surrounded. Whatever remains of Hamas in the north is completely surrounded on all 4 sides by Israeli forces.
And the two places near where the Al Nasser Hospital is on there and the Al Shifa Hospital, the Al Nasser Hospital is near the Shati or in the Shati refugee camp, and the Shati refugee camp is. Refugee camp. It's now a neighborhood of Gaza.
It's a slum neighborhood. Yeah, it's a
Hamas stronghold, and some of their most important facilities are there. Israel now controls it, and the same thing with the Shifa Hospital, as we mentioned, that's the headquarters. Israel now controls it. So the great symbols of Hamas power in Gaza have fallen.
So let's focus on or zoom in on the Shifa Hospital itself.
In Gaza City. Sorry, Gadi. One more point.
But that was the stronghold in the Gaza Strip was in Gaza City. That was the center.
Except we still have Han Yunis down south. It's worth noting because this will come up when we discuss the hostages. Han Yunis is the hometown of Yahya Sinwar, who's the head of Hamas now. And we assume that the hostages are there in the tunnels under Han Yunis. We assume that Yahya Sinwar is there and the hostages. And it's kind of telling Israel hasn't bombed Han Yunis very heavily, and one suspects that that's because of the hostages.
So now the Shifa Hospital and the announcement by the IDF spokesperson that they were bringing in with them medical supplies and contrary to what the BBC said, Arab-speaking IDF soldiers in order to help the needy. not in order to attack
They were
Arab.
they were targeting Arabic speakers, Gadi, to give them information.
Yeah, exactly.
Targeting them with information.
Targeting as in speaking to, and
Yeah.
but so this means, Mike, that there's international pressure, right? Because it's not just the first of all, the IDF and Israelis begin to resent this. The IDF is boasting to be the most moral army on the globe, and it's so obsessed with this that sometimes it puts its own soldiers at risk. We've discussed this. There are many Israelis who are saying the international law says that if you put civilians in harm's way, that's your problem, it's your war crime, and we will bomb your bases, whatever you put on them, but then we don't. And pragmatically speaking, and not just morally speaking, there's an interest behind that.
The Americans put direct pressure on Israel about Shifa Hospital, and from the White House, from the highest levels. Jake Sullivan, sorry, I just dropped my water almost on my computer. Jake Sullivan, the national security advisor, night before last, said publicly at a press conference that we, the United States, do not want to see soldiers with guns going through the hospital. He said that explicitly. But then last night, a spokesman for the White House said that there's now evidence that that Shifa Hospital is being used for terrorist activities. So presumably, what happened, between Jake Sullivan's statement and the statement by the spokesman, the Israelis went and presented more evidence to the Americans and said, "Look, we really have to take Shifa Hospital." And so they're being very careful about how they do it, and they're making a show. The Israelis are making a show of being very concerned about the patients and so on. But this is primarily a military target, and Hamas is cynically using the patients to cover their military activities.
And I might mention that regardless of the pragmatic considerations, Israel also takes very seriously its attempts to its imperative not to hurt the innocent. So being a very moral army, it's good when you don't confuse morality with your main purpose, which is to win the war. You don't want to lose the war morally.
Look, war is a tremendously ugly thing, and lots of innocent lives are going to be destroyed by it. I mean, that's why we try to prevent war. But there's no doubt that this, that the civilian casualty issue is one of the primary tools that Hamas is using in order to delegitimate Israel and in order to stop the Israeli advance.
And the media in the West, I like to quote Batya Unger on this, who said they're the stenographers of Hamas, because instead of insisting that Hamas is committing a war crime by placing a hospital on a military base, they are blaming Israel for civilian casualty and then weighing the proportions. If we killed enough, as if that was the issue. The issue is to win the war. It's not a body count competition. And if Hamas puts all its construction work into building tunnels under hospitals instead of building shelters, which it doesn't, if it puts its own citizenry in harm's way, it should be accountable for its war crime. I want to show you now a long video that shows how it looks on the ground, how civil institutions and military installations are intertwined. And Lieutenant General Daniel Hagari went down to Gaza in person in order to give you a tour through the Rantisi Hospital surrounding and the Rantisi Hospital a basement, which is an arsenal for a war. Let's see this video.
I'm here in Gaza City. We are here next to a house of a terrorist. This is one of the senior terrorists who is the head of the operational naval operations that led the raids into Israel. His house is right next to a school. His house is 200 yards from the hospital of Rantisi. Next to his house, there is a tunnel. Now I want to show you an operational tunnel. The tunnel is built with electricity. We first saw the solar panels, then the electricity goes here, and it goes down directly to the tunnel. Now you can see the tunnel. You can see the tunnel. The tunnel is let down more than 20 meters down. The robot found a door that is bulletproof. It's explosives proof, so it looks like a hard evidence, a clear evidence that the hospital direction is connected. This is a covered tunnel. It's part of the same floor and it slides down here. So it's a covered tunnel so nobody can find it. This is Rantisi Hospital. And this is the place where I showed you the tunnel. I want you to see. This is the back side of the hospital. Hamas used this hospital. Tonight we have entered into this building. I will show you the evidence. Let's enter into the hospital. We're now entering into the area of the hospital where we had found the evidence. This operation was conducted by Israeli Special Unit, the Israeli Navy SEALs. This is still an operation that is conducting. And I'm showing you the first evidence to see. We are now in the area of the basement of the hospital. I want to show you a room where we found all the gear, the operational gear of Hamas. Hamas is using hospitals, like we showed the evidence in Shifa Hospital. In other hospitals, we are now seeing it in live in Rantisi Hospital. An operation still conducting right now. Look at what Hamas is holding inside the hospital. I want you to understand, this kind of gear is a gear for a major fight. These are explosives. These are vests with explosives. Yeah, it's a body vest for terrorists to explode on forces. Among hospitals, among patients, we have hand grenades, Kalashnikovs, and then we have the RPGs. People shooting RPGs from hospitals. This is Hamas, firing RPGs for hospitals. The world has to understand who is Israel fighting against. We are now in the basement, and in this basement we found a motorcycle. They were all used in the massacre of the 7th of October. They even have bullets in this motorcycle. So they came back from the massacre on the 7th of October into Rantisi Hospital with hostages on a motorcycle. We're still researching this. Yards from here, we find the chair, a woman, clothes, and a rope. A rope next to the legs. And look above this, look above it. It's a baby bottle. It's a baby bottle in a basement. Above a World Health Organization sign. This is a suspicion for an area where hostages were being held. We're now looking at an infrastructure. You don't need to build something improvisedly in a hospital in the basement. Unless you want to hold someone in the basement, you don't want anyone to see him. Again, we're in the same basement, and here we see diapers, and we see, I don't know, maybe something, we see diapers. I want you to see this room. It's in the basement of the hospital. We can see this area is a closed area from the rest of the hospital. We can see the ventilation air that was done improvisedly to this area. And we can see infrastructures that was built in here, toilets, shower, a small kitchen, will provide the terrorists their needs. Also conduct a hideout where terrorists take hostages and hide out. And I will show you now the evidence. You're now entering into the room where we suspect the hostages were being held. I want you to look at this room. People are putting curtains with nothing above, just wall. No reason to put here a curtain unless you want to film hostages and deliver movies. And now we'll show you more evidence. In this room, there is a list. This list, in Arabic, this list says we are in an operation. The operation against Israel started in the 7th of October. This is a Guardian list where every terrorist writes his name and every terrorist has his own shift guarding the people that were here.
So this is very interesting, but it's not very good as PR. The current IDF PR people are tightly controlling information, but it also, instead of taking journalists to show all this infrastructure, if you go yourself as a general into this, then you look like Soviet propaganda and people don't take you seriously. And this video, which is very interesting, it's very interesting to see, this video is not shown around the world as it should have been. Mike,
no, and it only the only people who believe it are the people who, like you and me. I'm inclined to believe Israeli spokesmen, or let's just say I'm more more inclined to believe them than not. But most a lot of observers out there in the world are not. I follow closely what Turks are saying. And there's a high skepticism, and so if you want to try to break through the skepticism, you've got to bring third-party validators.
The game. You have to play the game with the press. You can't just control them and tell them what to say. Okay, we're now going into. We have amazing footage. It's already circulating, but we want to explain to you what it is. It's an unbelievable, heroic story about a young soldier who was off duty on civil clothes, and he was at the party at the Nova Festival where the slaughter went on, but he is from a commando unit of the Nachal Brigade. He's 22 years old, and he took command of a shelter, and with his bare hands and apparently a broken bottle, attempted to save a bunch of people who were hiding in this shelter, into which the terrorists threw grenades. Yeah.
Before you show it, Gadi, correct me if I'm wrong, but Nachal has a reputation for being kind of hippies, don't they? Isn't this the hippie brigade?
Yeah, because it also creates settlements. So the Nachal was originally constructed in order to enlarge the Jewish towns and villages, because, as you know, Zionists believe that the border is marked by the plow. Wherever the plow passes, there the border shall be. So originally, Nachal was conceived as a settling arm as well as a military arm. And this guy is from the commando of the Nachal. So you can bet that commando soldiers in any infantry brigade in Israel are skilled. But this guy is not just skilled. He was amazing, amazingly brave, and also cool-headed. Yeah.
What you just said wouldn't make sense to Americans, though, I think, because today the word settler and settlements, people automatically think of people who are religious. Yeah, religious and right wing. But you're talking about historically, this is what it was, and historically they were all left wingers.
Yeah.
So in today's Nachal, these are people who are inclined to be left wing and hippie like. No, am I wrong? This is my impression.
This is the image, but you'd be surprised. There is now Nachal Haredi, so ultra orthodox some are recruited to the Nachal as well. The thing is with the Nachal is that partly you do your army service and partly you're supposed to do agricultural work. So this is from socialist days. So this is very, very, a Marxist thing to do, or a Soviet thing to do. When you recruit the young, you recruit them for agriculture and for military service. So the video has no sound because it's from a dashboard of a parking car near where that happened. So we'll be explaining what is going on over the footage of this film, which I am now unable to show for some reason. Bear with me one more second, and here it is. So the issue
here, go ahead.
Yeah, these are the terrorists outside a shelter, outside a bomb shelter, and in here are hiding a bunch of kids.
And
so
they
he
just
threw in
threw
a grenade.
in.
One panicked and ran away. He was shot dead. He was shot dead. And our guy, Aner, is standing inside, and all he has to defend himself is a broken bottle. And there's a whole, I don't know, half a platoon of terrorists here, but they're afraid to go in, and so they shoot.
And
But
they're
what-
throwing 7 different grenades in, and he throws them back out 7
Yeah.
times.
Yeah, imagine that. So here comes I think it's the second grenade, and he throws it out, and it explodes on the car.
Yeah.
And now the next grenade, you can see, you'll be able to see coming out. Imagine there's a bunch of people in there, all huddling together, and this 22-year-old guy told them, "You're safe with me. Don't panic. I'll take care of this."
I have a bottle.
And here he throws the grenade. You see the grenade coming out?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he did this 8 times. We won't show the whole video. It repeats itself. But finally, they managed to kill him. And then they kept throwing grenades inside. But the people were huddled all together. Some were mortally wounded. Some bled to death, and some survived under the corpses. Imagine, Mike, they had to hide in there without moving, some of them losing blood for 5 hours. And there's a footage of the survivors, which we won't show you here, coming to the parents of Aner Shapira to describe to them what their kid has done and what he sacrificed his life for.
It's on my
it's on your Twitter feed.
Twitter feed, but it's all in Hebrew.
It's in Hebrew. I spoke to his father this morning on the radio.
Wow.
And this man, one can imagine how it feels to lose a son, but at least you can hear in this man's voice and the way he talked about him how proud he was of his son, and the fact that he saved all these kids. And amazing stories, and there are many like that from October 7. So, Mike, we're off to the hostages and to the geopolitical picture of where this stands. Is a deal now on the way?
Well, it certainly looks like it. The Americans are pushing it. The issue is, for the Israeli government, it's an extremely difficult issue, because what they're talking about is a deal that would be a release of women and children, and in return for women and children in Israeli captivity. And so if the Israelis agree to this, there are 2 sides of it that are two components that are difficult for the Israeli government. One is, this is only a partial deal. It's not an all or nothing deal. Only some of the hostages. So it's going to be politically difficult for the government, because the people whose loved ones are released will be grateful, but the ones whose loved ones were not released will say that this was done on the back of their loved ones, or some of them will feel that way. That claim will be made. So it will. There's a political cost for the government releasing terrorists from
Israeli jails.
From Israeli jails. Is going to be very controversial.
And might I add here that this is a very serious issue for Israelis, because Yahya Sinwar was himself released in the Shalit deal, where we gave them about 1,000 terrorists for 1 soldier, and we drove home the message that if you have our hostages, you can bring us to our knees. So people remember that Sinwar was there, and they think all this happened to us because we released terrorists.
And there's another issue to this too, because part of the cost of the deal is going to be a temporary ceasefire. And there are 2 things that are dangerous for as the government sees it. One is that in the past, when there have been ceasefires like this, it allows Hamas to regroup. And in the past, Hamas has used it to actually kill Israeli soldiers. So any pause in the battle tempo from a purely military point of view is not a good idea, because it allows Hamas to take the initiative. And the second thing is that they fear that this is going to be the beginning of the American pressure to stop the campaign completely. Once you have a ceasefire, the pressure will be to extend it further and further and further.
So it doesn't look imminent at the moment, in your opinion.
Well, the news reports coming out of Israel last night were that it was in the next couple of days. But then you see what Yoav Gallant said to Brett McGurk about there won't be a ceasefire. That
means
makes
there will be no deal.
I suspect we'll have to see how it goes.
I-
Remember, there are Americans involved here, and this is one area where the U.S. interest and the Israeli interest are not necessarily congruent, because the Hamas and Iran are going to use this to try to get the Americans and to put a wedge between the Americans and the Israelis by offering up American hostages to Biden.
I'll add one more aspect to it, and we've touched on it in one of our previous episodes, is that the controversy over how to go about the organizing the parents of the hostages and their relatives is heating up, because those who want to use it against the Netanyahu government are now being blamed by the others in the same group, other parents and relatives, that they are cooperating with Hamas. That if they make their demand louder on the government to bring the hostages home now, then they give hope to Hamas that the pressure is working and the wedge will be driven between groups inside Israeli society. And so this is a very heated debate. And if we were more cool-headed, this issue the government would have been able to say to those people quietly, this is not helpful in releasing your loved ones, and the pressure should not be on the Israeli government.
You know, they're gonna, I mean, if you were to do this, to game this out, and you could do it ideally, and you could control everything, obviously you can't. But if you could, then what you would want to say is all or nothing. We're not gonna make any partial deals. But there you have the domestic politics. You have the pressure from the Americans, so it's going to be very difficult.
So we'll stay tuned on that. And
just sorry, Gadi, just one last thing. We want to watch this as it develops. There are a couple things to watch as it goes along. First of all, there'll be the partial deal and all the issues that I mentioned, but at some point, the hostages are going to be used as human shields. The Hamas has already broadcast that it showed the body of one hostage. They showed a video of her alive and showed her dead, and then claimed
that it was an Israeli attack.
Which I'm doubtful of, but who knows? And then what's gonna happen as the Israelis close in? They announced, Yoav Gallant announced that Han Yunis and the south of Gaza is going to be attacked by Israel. The ground operation is going to include a movement into the south. But so what's going to happen is that Hamas is going to use the hostages as human shields when that happens.
It's amazing, because if you zoom out and look at the human aspect of the conflict, then you have one society which cares so deeply about its citizens and also is relatively mindful of the innocent bystanders on the other side. And then you have a society willing to sacrifice its own people ruthlessly, not building a single shelter while it builds a whole city of tunnels, and manipulating the moral sensibility of the other society and the world so successfully. So if there
successfully, this is the thing that I feel it's my job here over and over again to say, they're doing it successfully. The success of this information operation has been phenomenal.
Yes, indeed. So this is all from us. Our next episode we'll do this for the first time. It's an in-depth special with investigative journalist, also a ultra-Orthodox guy named Hanan Groner, who covers the West Bank and the Judea and Samaria, and you will get a look under the radar of what is actually going on in Judea and Samaria, and it's very, very worrying. That's all from us today. Mike, your turn to say thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. We want to see you back here on Sunday. And in fact, we want to see you back here on every other episode. Thank you for viewing.
Exactly.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.